Hello, and welcome to another MarketMuse content strategy webinar in our series. I'm our host, Jeff Coyle, the co-founder and chief strategy officer for MarketMuse. And today we're going to be talking about how to connect search engine optimization efforts to money. SEO for revenue, grow your business, not just your rankings. We've got a person who really specializes in go-to-market advisory, bringing teams away from science projects and into turning real business success. All right, cool. President of Fire and Spark, Dale Bertrand, thanks for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about Fire and Spark, your mission, how you got to be doing what you're doing every day.
So I have a technical background. So I studied engineering undergrad, studied AI in grad school. So I worked as an engineer and a software developer for like the first 8 years of my career. And then I switched over to marketing. And when I switched over to marketing, because of the technical background and because I studied AI in grad school, people were asking me to do SEO. So I ended up spending a good amount of time in that space. I liked it and built an agency around it. And now we're off to the races.
Yeah, and I was thinking about us hanging out in San Diego, and it was a little bit at Content Tech. It was a little bit during that kind of scary phase in the world where it was like, are live events actually still happening, or are they going to happen?
Yeah,
well,
I didn't get too close. Not then.
Yeah, you
and I are hanging out.
We were having a beer, but far away from each other. But no, we were saying basically when business events are a great viewpoint or understanding of where business is. And I know we were talking about innovations in artificial intelligence. When you were studying artificial intelligence, what were the things that you saw that were coming, and what are the things that you were most interested in during that time, and how has that changed over time?
Wow, it was so long ago. I was working on pretty narrow AI that were dedicated algorithms for face recognition. And then also we were using them to detect tumors in medical images. And that was so long ago that those algorithms are not even used anymore. Now for those applications, everything's deep learning based. But what I saw was coming was I saw how there were so many automation use cases that were basically on the horizon. And you fast forward, that was 20 years ago, right? So You fast forward to today, and the technology is so far advanced beyond when I worked on it, and everything that we were imagining when we were working on the algorithms back then is it's actually starting to come true now, which is insane.
I know, isn't it wild that we were talking? I remember we were talking about I had built a focused crawler-based search engine in the early to mid 2000s, and we were saying basically those things conceptually are turning into what the definition of content quality is today. And that really gets into kind of dovetailing with our discussions, things that they existed so long ago, but now they're all underneath one umbrella of SEO, of the concept of SEO, and really now content quality, comprehensiveness, making sure your teams are working together. It's really not optional. So the way when you think about SEO for revenue, what is the typical discussion that you're having with somebody who hasn't made that jump, that they should be connecting the dots to these things as the standard?
Yeah, so the way I think about it is typically your goal for an SEO campaign is to improve your rankings and get more organic traffic. But if we stop and think about it, like everybody knows, not all traffic converts. And some rankings might be for keywords that nobody searches for. So why are these our goals? And I'll ask you, Jeff, if you're getting started with an SEO campaign, what's the first thing you would do?
Good question. I want to know what their existing footprint in the world is. What does that mean? I would want to know what pages they have.
Yes.
What pages do they currently have? What are they about? What are the concepts that they desire to own?
Let's stop there, because I don't want you to keep going. Then I can be right. If I cut you off, then I can completely answer. But so what you're describing is you're asking questions about basically your brand's website, content, keywords, and rankings. And that's typically where people start out. And then also you do a technical audit to see if there's anything broken that might need to be fixed.
Right.
And that's what you do when the goal of your SEO campaign is rankings and traffic. Right. But if the goal of your SEO campaign is organic sales and revenue, then instead of starting with questions about your brand and your website and your rankings, you're starting with questions about your target customers. So what questions do they ask when they're making a purchase decision? What information do they need to move to the next stage of their buyer's journey? so that when you're asking questions about your customers, you end up at a different point. Because if you end up with hollow vanity rankings that don't actually lead to conversion, that's because you're optimizing for keywords with high volume and low competition. But are they aligned with the search intent? Are they aligned with the questions your customers are asking? And then there's another piece of it, which is conversion points. What I like to do is I like to think, what is that information my customers need so that I can understand the intent behind the keywords I can go after. Then I choose what are the keywords, like what are they actually typing into Google. Other people do it the other way around. And then also up front, before I start thinking about what content to create, I'm thinking about conversion points. So what are the calls to action that align with those search intents that I'm going to be optimizing for, so that I can come up with those upfront before I start writing copy, before I decide what types of content I'm going to create.
So doesn't and I like to think about it as I want to bring your content strategy into business strategy. I want to bring your SEO strategy to be a business strategy. But how do you make sure that nothing gets lost in translation there? Because there's the potential for somebody to come in and all they want is a number. They just want revenue, right? They just want a number. They don't really care how you're getting it. They wouldn't value a dollar sale from one channel differently than they would from another channel. How do you change that perspective?
Well, so there's a lot of questions there to ask when you're getting started, and the answers are really particular and specific to your brand. Mm-hmm. So I would ask questions about, what are your best-selling products or services? What are your margins on those products or services? What do you say now on a sales call that closes the deal? So I can start to get some information about the calls to action that might work well. And then from there, when we have that information, we're able to craft an SEO strategy that is aligned with the business goals and also aligned with the goal of driving sales and revenue at the end of the day, rather than just rankings.
I love that. And I think it's the forgotten piece of SEO. And it's why we have webinars, like I mentioned before, with someone like a Pam Didner, who is talking about sales enablement. Is you're speaking about effectively, how do you use SEO? How do you tie together SEO to bring the sales team potentially, or bring the e-commerce team together with the marketing team or the content team? Because they may not have ever put two and two together, that you should be thinking about what words get used on phone calls to close deals, or why the product page is your conversion page, or what margins you have on one product versus another. Do you have offers available through other channels? Does it require you to do somewhat of a campaign audit, or those types of kind of inventories of campaigns, or about messaging?
So yes, definitely that's important. Typical things that we would do, like doing an audit of your brand's content, but also an audit of competitors' content. We want to understand what's performing for your competitors, what's performing for you now, because there's insights in that information that will be really useful to you. But what I want to add to that is, a lot of times marketers will hide behind their tools. So they might be like using a keyword research tool and trying to use this data for all the keywords to understand the motivations behind their customers' buying decisions, when in reality, like, you have to talk to real customers. So because I started out with SEO as a very technical guy, I was a programmer. Then I got comfortable with having real conversations with real people. And I could talk to customers and ask them the right questions. But a lot of it depends on your organization and your situation. You might be in a situation where you have the opportunity to talk to real customers and ask them questions and ask them what they're looking for, what they type into Google, why, what answers did they find, what was satisfying to them, what wasn't satisfying to them. Or you might be in a situation at an organization where you have access to the sales folks on your team, and you can talk to them about what questions people ask, how they answer them, what do they say that closes a deal, and that could be a great source of that information. And then there are other times that you might have a search box on your website for internal search, and you can take a look at that. Or you have inbound inquiries or chat logs or customer service logs, but you're trying to figure out how you get access to your customers' thinking, so that when you're creating content, you're coming up with topics that are relevant and useful when your customers are making a buying decision.
Nice. Yeah, I love the comment about internal search engine. It's not necessarily that it's only that. It's that you're aiming to almost change the way that people are thinking about what search engine optimization is. right? Because internal search, by the way, I remember giving a presentation in like 2005. I was like, it's the ultimate gap analyzer, because it is. People can't find your stuff. It could be a usability gap, it could be a product gap, it could be a content gap. But you're also looking for that in the realm of competitive landscape. You're looking for what you don't have. Who are you not right now? But I think it requires, I think, some teams to change the way that they think about SEO. They might have somebody internally that you're working with who equates SEO to, let's just say, a particular type of content. Are you often a change agent there? Are you coming in and you're saying, hey, it's not just about the blog on your website, it's everything? Because that's where I see most mistakes made on teams, is they relegate SEO into a little box.
Yeah, like getting back to what we were saying about doing a content audit, like a content audit is critical, but I like to do it upfront to understand what's working. And then it's the why that I'm going after when I'm talking directly to customers or to the sales folks on my team that might have those insights. And that's really what's going to allow you to just drill into the right topics for your content strategy. And then when you're writing content, make sure that you're meeting your customers where they're at, which is something people don't always think of, which is like, what is their worldview? So if I was trying to sell like an SEO service, let's say, some people think SEO is technical. Some people think SEO is all about content. Some people think it's all about link building, which was me when I started with SEO. And then other people are just confused. Like, I don't even know how to spell SEO. They're just trying to figure out like what are the most modern SEO best practices. So if I was selling SEO services, which I actually do, then I would be writing a piece of content. I would want to meet people where they're at. Acknowledge something like SEO is confusing because Google is changing so quickly, or acknowledge something like SEO used to be all technical, but things have changed. Now we need to think about content. Or the same thing with people who think that SEO is all about authority building and link building, but meet them where they're at. So I've done a lot of like customer interviews back in the day when I was building marketing personas and all of that. And I would underline, circle, and star my notes based on whether it was a pain point, a worldview, or a topic, like a content topic that I thought I could use later. And all of that is interesting and useful when it comes time to create your content strategy.
Nice. No, I love that. I think that it dovetails well with something I think we both share, and I talk about a lot. It's that every content item, or if it's a campaign or a collection of content being created for a singular purpose, needs to have a clear purpose. And I think that persona, who's it for, is critical, right? Isn't that something like you don't create a content item unless you know who is it for, right? And don't just assume 100%. Don't assume everybody knows who is for, right? How do you go through? What are the things that every page you create must have that people don't think about? And one of them, obviously, target audience. But what are the other things that you would think about? The goal.
So really important is that the page is targeting an intent. So of course it's targeting the persona, right? If we're building content that doesn't target our target customer, then we're doing something wrong. Tighter persona you have.
I'm going to put a pin in that. I'm coming back to it. Okay, keep going. Yeah.
The tighter persona definition you have, the better. But then within that persona, there are different intents. One example I like to give is, imagine you run a brewery and you sell craft beer. So you'll have people who are looking to discover an in-person event, which might be like a brewery tour or something like that. You have other people who are online looking for great tasting beer that they can legally get delivered to their house. But then there are people who have already tried your beer and they're a fan, and they're looking to buy a gift package or a gift card for a friend so their friend can try your beer. And then also for those loyal customers, they might want to sign up for a subscription where they get the beer in the mail once a month, a 6-pack a month membership or something like that. And then earlier on in that customer journey, there might be people who are aware of your product, but they're actively comparing it to other products or other solutions. So the reason why I'm mapping this out is we want to go after a very specific intent at a specific point of the customer journey, and then make sure that we have a call to action that is aligned with that intent. So in the example I gave, if somebody's looking for something to do on a Friday night, then there's a call to action related to the brewery tour, not sign up for our Beer of the Month club. But I want to define those calls to action up front So if I'm working with a new brand on a new website, up front, we're doing all the typical research, and we're also mapping out the customer journey, and we're doing keyword research and understanding the intents we're going after. But I want to define those conversion points aligned with those intents, so that when it comes time for me to create content, I know the intent that piece of content is going after, and I know the conversion point that the copy on that page should be driving that visitor to, who arrived with a very specific intent.
You twist the matrix the way I love to twist the matrix with this. And it's the right way to do it. It really is. And I think everybody's got to think about, maybe it's not just one thing that defines what intent is for me. Maybe I need expertise level. Maybe I need a explicit intent based on stage, the stage of the customer. And you just described one where they're unknown need, don't know my brand, they know my brand, they're interested in learning more, they have specific product needs, they're comparing their customer that's happy. You could also have somebody who had an experience with your beer that they didn't enjoy, and they were looking for something else related. So you're thinking about the different stages of those types of things. And I love the adjacent stages of what somebody who's interested in this type of product might also be interested in, almost like affinity.
Yeah. So and
those are critical too. Yeah.
If you're thinking like an e-commerce site, there's a very big difference between a call to action, which is 10% off your first purchase, right, and a call to action, which is share the product you love. Here's a gift card for in your family. Those are very different stages of the customer journey. And if you map that out up front, that will help you decide what content you could create that would be most effective.
And I think that everybody needs to really think about that for a page. Don't create any more content until each page has that representation, for a couple reasons. One is not every page will have the same purpose and it won't have the same outcomes. So why would you treat it that way from the start to the finish? And then I love the way you're thinking about always understand this page, what are the conversion points? Because a lot of times I think people are making pages that they believe to be owned by one team, or that their conversion isn't in that picture. But isn't it true that we should always be looking for conversion on every page, whether it be conversion to a sale or conversion to the next stage of the funnel, or even in some cases, if they're post-purchase troubleshooting, like creating a new funnel for expansion or something like that. But how do you coach a team to think like conversion does happen on every page, even if a sale doesn't happen on every page?
Yeah, look, we always want to move people forward. So the way that I would think about it is, given the stage of the customer journey that we're targeting with this piece of content, what would be the ask or the offer that would move them to the next stage? And it might not be like buy now, obviously, especially if it's a high consideration sale with multiple touch points before somebody actually buys something. One example I like to give is for some car sites. So let's say you want to buy a new car and you're shopping around online. There might be a call to action that says, get a firm offer on your, and that's like catnip to me, right? Like I've got a beat up old Chevy in my driveway that I kick every time I walk by it, and I want to figure out if I can get some cash out of that thing, because right now it's just leaving oil stains in my, right? That offers catnip to me, and I'm trading my email address for it. But it might not even be a call to action that you trade your email address for. It might be an ungated piece of content, like a price list or see my service offerings, or whatever is aligned with that piece, with the intent that the piece of content is targeting.
Yeah, I love that thought. By the way, it's hilarious. You use car and beer analogies. Those are two of my three favorite analogies. And people who know me, people who listen to this show know most of my analogies are car, beer, and hockey. That's why we're on the same show. Yeah.
This is why we're best friends. Or at least I thought that until you said hockey. I'm more of a basketball guy.
Exactly. We won't get into that one, but no, it gets into I like to ask the question. It's, if you knew the intent of the reader, what would you ask them to do? You've got to go through that experiment. Yeah. Because maybe you say, this article could be good for these 3 or 4 different types of people. Then you're like, okay, now is everything else right then, right? Because what if they don't have a car, but they're reading this? Okay, maybe this page isn't really for them, right? So how do you coach somebody the point of example here is some SEOs who work with very powerful sites, they get away with more weakness in content strategy because they can win with weaker content. I'll use an example of a large healthcare site who famously writes articles that have multiple intents and they can still rank. Like,
yes. And are you going to name names? No?
No,
Okay.
no, never, no. Only on Clubhouse when it's not recording. So the Clubhouse, yeah. How do you coach somebody not to point to that? And the same thing would be if they're pointing to, this is how Amazon does it. This is how a Walmart does it. This is how I see publishers do it. Why do they have to do it differently? Why do they have to be so much more precise?
Yeah, it's tough because you might be a brand who's just getting started, and then really you're going to have to be tight with your keyword targeting and your intent targeting, and you're just not going to be able to go after anything that's very competitive. And then on the other end of the spectrum, like you're talking about, Jeff, a brand with a ton of authority that can do whatever they want. Brands I work with are somewhere in the middle. The vast majority of them are. So you really have to choose your battles. What we're seeing with Google's algorithm, we haven't talked about like changes in Google's algorithm yet, and especially now that Google's got an AI algorithm instead of a more rules-based algorithm. But what we're seeing is Google is rewarding content that is very focused, especially if you have authority that Google deems relevant to that particular topic area. Depends on your brand, but if you have less authority, you need to be more focused. And if you have more authority, you can get away with going after more broad topics or more intense in the same article. In that case, and honestly, like in all cases, I like the idea of multiple calls to action that are different, like for exactly what you're saying. Like maybe I don't have a trade-in and I still want to buy a car, but what I would do personally on that page is I would have multiple calls to action that are just as compelling as the get a firm offer on your trade-in for the different types of people that are coming, but they're likely all coming for the same intent. And then the other thing that I want to turn around there, a lot of times people are trying to figure out what is the intent behind a keyword, and that's important. You should be looking at that. But I really start with what is the intent that we're going after. Like we sell a specific product and a specific service. So there are specific intents that we want to attract to our website. And I would start there and then map the keywords on top of that. Okay, what do our ideal customers type into Google when they're searching for this intent? When they have the intent to buy a car with a trade-in, or when they have the intent to rent a vintage car for the weekend, whatever the intent is, figure out what those keywords are, and then you'll optimize for those keywords. Eventually you'll get some rankings and some traffic, but not all of the people typing in that keyword are going to have the same intent. So if a keyword has, I'm going to make up a number here, 100,000 people a month that are searching for it, not all of them are going to have exactly the same intent. And with the more broad, generic, and then because people ask the question, what's the intent behind this keyword? And I was like, wrong question.
It's right. Yes, it's multiple. So you're thinking about it from a understanding the audience, understanding the market dynamic, when from an intent perspective, but you can also do that by understanding Google's challenge. They have a major challenge, and this I wanted to layer onto something you said and ask your perspective of it. Is they frequently don't know the intent, or they do know the intent and they know that it is fractured. It could be one thing, it could be another. So they're showing some pages that address one. They're showing because they're trying to show you the perfect buffet. And you find the item you like. So how do you treat? And then you have some queries that have no ambiguity. Right? They are always the same. 90x% of it, it's one intent, one meaning, which are, by the way, two different things. And most of the pages on that search result are very similar in focus. There may be some nuances there. So how do you teach teams that you got to cover both? You have to have coverage on the ones that have ambiguous intent, different type of payoff, and you got to cover ones that have intent or explicit intent.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to figuring out what is the intent, like Google knows more than you do as a human marketer in terms of what the intent is, and Google also knows more than your SEO tool in terms of what the intent is. So if you've identified keywords, you're doing keyword research, so you've identified keywords that you want to target, it's time to type them into Google one at a time and see what shows up on the search results page. You can learn a lot once you get good at reading the results. This is what I talk about a lot in the workshops that I do. Read the results. If it's a broad keyword with many different intents and probably high search volume, you're going to see a number of different types of results. Maybe a video, maybe a map listing if it's local, and some product shopping ads, and then a bunch of websites and web pages. If it's a very specific keyword, like a long keyword like red Nike men's running shoes size 8, like Google knows and you know what people are looking for. They're looking to buy a shoe, but are they looking to buy it online or are they looking to buy it at retail? It is like, so there really are, even a very specific keyword like that, there are two intents behind it. What I recommend doing is before you sit down and write an article, part of your process is to type the keyword or keywords that you're targeting into Google and read the results. That's how you're going to learn what the multiple intents or maybe only one or two intents are behind a keyword.
This webinar brought to you by MarketMuse, who has SERP X-ray and the heat map solution that will also make that a very pleasant experience. All right, back to this.
Yes.
But yes, it's right though. You do have to understand, is everything the same? That doesn't mean you should only do the one page, right? So I'm going to bring this back to conversions and bring this back to revenue, because oftentimes people have that tail wagging the dog perspective. The page they see performing, they want to create that page. How do you get a team to realize that they've got to build a lot of pages to have the honor of that page of performing? So they may have to build some stuff. My one quote is, you don't deserve to be there at the bottom of the funnel unless you were there at the top of the funnel. But how do you get a team to do the work that's required for that? When attribution may mean something else.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Honestly, in my conversations, I have some slides where I show like content is fuel for SEO and for traffic and for sales. At the end of the day, we'll end up creating like thousands of pages that go after different permutations of the questions that customers are asking. And really, I think what it comes down to is that a lot of the highest value traffic is very competitive. So if you're going to go after the best keywords in your space, it's probably going to be difficult to like rank number one and get that traffic. But there are many long tail versions of that intent in those keywords that are much less competitive. And if you were to create that content, you can rank, you can get traffic, but you need a lot more of it to really equal the traffic that you would get if it were possible for you to rank number one for the most competitive keywords in your space. So if you're not like the number one top dog in your space for authority, then you're going to end up in more of a long tail. Usually we would say long tail keyword, but that's not the way I want people to think about it. A long tail intent type of strategy with a lot of content that basically targets a lot of different intents, and that adds up to or traffic and sales at the end of the day.
So you may, in those scenarios, you may still need to build that comprehensive guide. You may still need to build the subtopics, but you're building them with the right expectations that you just haven't earned it yet. You may only see some power coming from the nodes of that tree. You still have to build the infrastructure. But I think that teams have a really hard time with that because there was trends in long tailing where people were saying you only had to do that. And I used to describe that as you had a lot of teeth without a jaw. And that really can create problems, and it can create a misunderstanding inside an organization of the value of SEO. It seems like something cheating or cheap or weird. It's like, why would we create that? Doesn't it all have to make sense like a symphony?
SEO builds over time. So if you're creating SEO content, like you're going to see your initial wins with those long tail searches. But if you're doing it for a while and you're building authority and you're building a base of content and you're building out content pillars and more, and then in addition to that, you're building more authoritative pillar pieces that are going after the most competitive keywords, you will get there over time. But if you're starting out or you're just starting to work on SEO, those early wins are going to be in the long tail traffic.
Yeah, it's going to be, the early wins will be on weaker items. You will have to really differentiate your high competition zones. And I love the way you describe that. So I think it's right on. Don't get discouraged or don't make the decision not to build those important pieces because they're very valuable for users, you may only start to see the wins and things that you didn't expect. And before we get into, I think I want to talk about personalization, because you mentioned a few things: and personalization, intent-driven conversion methods, and actual tactics for conversions. I'd like to get your perspective on something that you touched on, and identifying intent targets, identifying the proper personas. How do you view sourcing content creation then in those situations? So do you focus on them harnessing the internal experts at the company you're working with? Do you try to hire experts that are in the field? What's your vision of that? I think that's really going to be a big difference of how one does things right in 2023. It's people who have a clear answer there.
Yeah, we've done all of the above for sourcing content. What we're trying to do is we're trying to build content that's trustworthy and authoritative and accurate, and Google recognizes all of that, right? The content itself needs to be aligned with the questions your customers are asking. It needs to give them the information that they need, that they're looking for when they're trying to make a buying decision, but it also needs to be trustworthy. And we need to think about the signals that Google's looking at to determine whether it's trustworthy or not. We look at backlinks are still powerful, but backlinking is a lot harder than it used to be back in the day. When I started with SEO, link building was like 90% of what I do. Now it's 10% of what I do. Like, it's really changed a lot. Nowadays, it's all about content. And I know that's why we're having this content conversation today, but I do a lot less link building and I do a lot more creating content. And we want Google to see that the content we're creating is associated with authoritative individuals and organizations in our space, whatever space that is. You might be like an SEO agency like me. So for me, it's the conferences that I speak at. And Jeff, I know you do a lot of conference speaking too, but that gives me credibility and authority. And I need Google to see that in order to get rankings, traffic, and sales at the end of the day that we care about. But if instead, like, you're going back to the brewery example, it could be something totally different. Like you basically, you're a local business and you'll have relationships with the Chamber of Commerce and other individuals and organizations that have authority, like in your local town or in your city. We're always looking at that. And one place where that's really important is like healthcare content. We do a lot of work in the healthcare space. So if you have like a consumer-facing healthcare brand, maybe they have clinics, maybe they don't. Google wants to see that you're associated with MDs, with medical schools, with the Mayo Clinic if you can do it, with academic research in the medical space that's going on. The bar is much higher. The reason why I always talk about like medical content is because the bar is much higher for medical content when it comes to Google and getting rankings. So that's an area where it's clear that you have to be working with experts. So maybe you have in-house experts and maybe they're contributing to articles. We love to have bylines or reviewed bylines that have like with people with letters after their names, basically. So we love to have that on the content that we're creating. But those experts, they might be in-house, they might not. We worked with one brand where we hired an MD not to do the writing, but to spend 1 hour a month reviewing the content that we put out there so that we can have that reviewed byline and have that like just big box of his affiliations, his academic papers, letters after his name, all of that, and then link out to those. And we like those to be reciprocal. So if we're working with experts of any kind, we want to reach out to the school they go to or any other academic affiliations they might have and see if we can get some content syndicated in place, maybe through the university. Like the large universities have PR departments. If one of the graduates is doing something awesome or noteworthy, we can reach out to them and write something for them. Maybe they'll mention it. But so we like to have those reciprocal mentions to prove to Google that we have authoritative content.
I think that is worth the price of admission for today's show. And I think it's something that everybody, no matter what industry you're in, it's relevant. And this is what I've been on the soapbox of for the past two years, is to say, you should have an expert review everything that goes to your site. If you aren't the expert, you probably should, even if you are the expert. And don't just ask them to review it. Ask them to add something to it. Whether it's if the article has no personal story, if the article has no unique specific insights, right? But challenge your internal team members not to slow down the process. You may publish it and go back and update it a little bit later. Challenge your experts, no matter who they are. Maybe they're an expert of customer success for your org. Maybe they're a product expert, an engineering expert. Maybe they're the thought leader in your org. Maybe it's an advisor. Challenge them not only to review the content, but to add something that could make the page what I would reference as blue ocean, like something that your company could only have come up with. I think every company, every topic should be thinking about that right now, because that's what's going to make them special. I like to look at an article. I like to look at an article like Steven Jeske on my team, head of content strategy, awesome SEO, awesome content strategist. I like to read his articles and add something a little bit different, add something to it, because he may not have added a personal story. He may read something that I wrote and add to it. And what that does is it creates unique value without you even knowing. And I think
I love that. And I want to give you like something really practical and actionable. So Jeff, if I was building your SEO content and you were one of my experts, what I would do is I put together what I call a content fragment spreadsheet. So content fragments. And I would take one of your presentations or a book that you wrote or a paper you wrote, whatever it is that you have out there in the world, maybe it's your blog. And I would go through it and I would ask you questions about individual, if it was a presentation, each individual slide. And I would write 2 sentences, write down your answer, 2 sentences in my spreadsheet. So at the end of that 20-minute conversation, I have 20 content fragments that are basically your random opinions on random things that you've already put out there into the world. And then when I'm writing my content, I include those exactly in the way that you're saying. And that's what we do now when we're working.
I love that. And one thing that's real powerful is, that might be me in this example, but what if it's a lawyer who isn't going to sit down and write, right? But you want their perspective. Extracting the amazing expertise out of their brain. They may be an engineer who works 10 hours away from you on the clock, so you never really have getting their insight. And your job as a content strategist, as a content marketer, is to weave it in. That's going to yield more power and more revenue and more ability to gather the moss, gather that authority over time. So, when you're thinking about those types of scenarios, I love those examples, by the way, and that's just driving wins. When you're going to conversion metrics, when you're going to tactics that can be used for generating conversions, and let's limit this to bottom of the funnel, right? So let's limit it to leads and sales. What are the things, so many teams I speak with, they're like, I don't even want to get into that, right? Yeah. Either because it's a silo or they think it's so hard, it's just alien to them. And the silo example would be where a demand gen person may be responsible for it and their team screwed up, right? And they're not all working together. Our e-commerce team controls all of that, versus somebody who just thinks it's too hard to actually get sales with content. How do you approach that situation?
When I think about conversion, even because bottom of the funnel, people think buy now button, right? And that's the only thing you can do. But the way that I think of conversion is really give before you get. So what am I giving to get what I want? And we see this all the time online because it works. Like I go to an e-commerce site and it's a 10% coupon for my first purchase. Or it might be the car dealership where it's like, get a firm offer on your car. What I start with is brainstorm. What can we give after I have a firm, full, complete, thorough understanding of my target customer? We need to understand, and I keep coming back to this, but it's really the basis of everything we're talking about here, which is understanding the questions they ask when they're making a buying decision, why they're asking those questions, the motivations behind it, and their worldview. And that will help you to figure out what you need to give, or what can you give in order to get the conversion that you want. It could be a price list, it could be information, it could be a conversation that's valuable to them, or a coupon, or an estimate on their used car. Like there's just so much that you could look at bottom of the funnel, but think give, and that's what'll get you there.
How you would give in e-commerce?
Yeah, it depends on the situation. The obvious thing that almost everybody does is that 10% off your first purchase. But there is a lot more depending on your space. And if you have a high consideration purchase, like somebody buying a generator system for their house versus somebody buying diapers online, which would be a more transactional purchase, then you have more opportunities for the give, like if you have a high consideration sale that you're selling online. So for e-commerce, I'm trying to think off the top of my head some good examples here. There could be like buy one, give one. There's also like a purpose-driven angle to it, where there are a number of brands that they'll give to a cause that we both care about, because we've identified a purpose that's aligned with the brand that our customers care about. And if you buy from us, we will give to that cause. So that's another way to do it. And then there's all the obvious tricks that you see in the infomercials. Buy one today, we'll give you one for free. But you have to figure out what works. Like when I'm looking at e-commerce sites, maybe they're selling products with a low price point. I'm trying to think, how do we package products together? So if we buy products that are complementary, imagine your e-commerce, you're selling like shaving kits for men. So you're selling the shavers, you're selling the cream. So how do we bundle those two things together in the bundle strategy so that we can give a little more in order to get the conversion that we want? But then there's also like the subscription strategy, where obviously we would love any e-commerce with a subscription attached to it is going to be much more profitable, powerful. But in order to do, you can't just ask people like, hey, not only do I want you to give me your credit card today for a purchase, but I'm going to charge you every month from here on out for the rest of your life. That's not giving, that's just taking. Right. If you could craft some sort of loyalty program or subscription or bundle that's advantageous to your buyer, then that's giving that could help you to get the conversion.
Wow, you went from like literal giving, like charitable giving, all the way to the taking. It can't be all about taking. I love that.
That's what I do, and I haven't even started drinking yet. But go ahead.
I love it. And the thing that I'll mention is one nuance, and I think this is where you see it. And to Lori's question, I think, and I wrote a post with Steven Jesky, who I just mentioned before, on the e-commerce content maturity model. And what you're seeing speaks to what Dale said. I leave off that. That's actually a blind spot of the piece. It's that you do need to consider the offer and how you're incenting someone to buy. Because what I'm seeing in the evolution of sale conversion content is people realize that exhibiting their brand's expertise is a give. So I'm selling guitars, showing that I know how to take care of a guitar, showing that I know how to play it, showing that I will coach you on actually being a better player. Or maybe this is a collectible, and I know how to keep collectibles dry, clean. And so exhibiting expertise can be a give as well. And it can also be a signal of proof that you want to do business with this person. And on the flip side, promotions can hurt content if they don't make sense. And I love the way you described that. What did you say? A generator was the example versus a pair of diapers, or versus diapers?
Yeah, a high consideration purchase. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'd be really weird if you were a $4,000 generator, if you were doing buy one, get one free. That's not the mind of the buyer. Buy one, get one free diapers. I have a 4 and a 6-year-old boy. They're thankfully not diapers. But when I did have a lot of diapers in my life, buy one, get one free diapers. Heck yeah, because you can always use more diapers. But it's not the same thing. And I think that people don't consider the mind of the buyer. And I think that was very inspiring. When you're thinking about revenue, think about what they're going through in that purchase decision. And by the way, you should have content that addresses every single feeling they might have during that process, because that might be a way to catch them into those stages of the funnel. Do you ever create content that is like the questions people are asking at the tail end of the funnel? Or
one of our
I love those types of content packages.
Yeah, one of our strategies we haven't really talked about is typically a brand will have a website with an FAQ on the website. And your typical FAQ is for customer service. It's branded. Right. It's about your brand. It's about your shipping policy, or how happy you're going to be working with us, or whatever it is. What we like to do is to create a separate FAQ on your website that is non-branded. It's for customer acquisition, not customer service. So it would go after usually purchase intent questions. So people we know who are in the market, or asking the type of questions that we want to address in order to get people into our funnel. And so we'll build that out. And really the secret there is that's content that builds in a spreadsheet, just like the expert content fragments that I told you about. And we love to put those purchase intent questions, that just question, answer. It'd be 1 paragraph, 2 paragraph answer. Everywhere on the website, you will find that once you built out a bunch of those question, answer, that some of them are relevant to specific pages on your site, specific products. For the e-commerce example, category pages, collections that you're building. So we love to build as much of that as you can and put it on the site. Some of it will go on the new FAQ, and we'll give it a snazzy name like the beer drinkers FAQ or something like that. And they'll have and that's the one for customer acquisition on their website. And then another thing that I want to add to this that works really well for us, just while I'm spilling all my secrets here,
I love it,
is like when I'm creating content, this works especially well in e-commerce for the category page, I call it think buying guide, which is if I'm going after buyers trying to get them to hit the buy button, like, why isn't this page like giving them the information that they need to make a decision, a purchase decision? And the way I get into that mindset as a content marketer is to think buying guide. So if I were, and the example I'll give is your typical category page on an e-commerce site. So going back to our favorite beer example, you might have a non-alcoholic beer category if that's something that you offer. And that would be a category page typically with a headline and a product grid. You click on and maybe there's some buy buttons, and that's boring, right? But what are the questions that people would have? What would they need to know before they can actually hit the buy button? They might want to know, is this okay for somebody who's pregnant? That's the reason why I'm looking for non-alcoholic beer. Or they might want to know the calorie profile or how it's made or how does this compare? Is it really 0 alcohol or is it just a trace of alcohol? There are a bunch of questions that I would have buying a product like that. Could I use it to make a mixed drink? And would it taste like what I would expect the mixed drink to taste like? So using this category page as an example, build it out as a buying guide. If you thought of it as a buying guide, you put a little bit of information at the top, then the product grid. You would put a little more information than normal in the product grid to compare the products. Maybe this one has 0 alcohol, this one has a trace of alcohol, this one's good for mixers, this one's not. And then underneath it, you put some Q&A. Like, what other questions do people have when they're looking for specifically this type of product in this category on my website? So if you think, and I can't say it without doing this, I don't know why.
I love it.
But if you think buying guide, that'll help you to build out pages of all types with the information that your customers need. You'll get more sales. That's an SEO for revenue, not rankings tactic.
Yes, you've nailed it. And that e-commerce, it's so funny that you mentioned that right after I mentioned that e-commerce content maturity model, because it goes into buyer guides, showcase your expertise, show them that with the way that you position your category pages. I love the example of good for mixers. I love the example of FAQs. I love the example of dump your bland SEO blurb category preconception. I call them the milk toast content, right? It's bland, timid. It's non-alcoholic beers are beers without alcohol.
That's what you do when you're writing for a search engine for rankings. And that's not gonna move the needle on your business. That's gonna get you fired if get his rankings, right? We need this traffic to convert to sales to keep our jobs, basically.
Go through your content and everything you've got, even if you think it's good for SEO, quote unquote, or you don't, and you don't want people to look at it because you think that's somebody else's content, somebody else's problem. Dale mentions one of my favorite techniques in user-generated content, support content, or technical documentation. If you're in B2B, you can turn those into honeypots. You can turn them into amazing messages that coach people regardless, like at the right stage of the funnel. So take your support forum and turn it into a marketing vehicle. I think that those are beautiful things, and it really connects with me. I love those techniques. Take your customer forum, your user forum, you run a UGC, reviews, turn those into marketing vehicles as well. Okay, I got a couple more questions. High buyer intent videos for a video production company that does all kinds of videos. A lot of our keywords are more educational, struggling to find high buyer intent. That's one question that I do want to touch on because it is very specific. However, there is uniformity there. So think about this is somebody they have a clear product, but they want to sell maybe the value of that product, which I'm assuming they do, or their process as a product.
Yeah. Here's the problem, and this might get me in trouble. Jeff, just smack me through the video if you don't like this. Yeah. But I think the problem is you're selling videos. And you got to think, why do people want videos in the first place? Is it to improve the conversion on my website? Is it to book speaking gigs as a speaker? It's going to go on my speaking site. Is it because I want to be a YouTube influencer? Is it for my wedding and I want a lasting memory? So I think the buyer intent that you would be able to find online isn't going to be specifically for videos. It's going to be for the benefits that people are looking for, the reasons why they want the video in the first place. So using the example of, because we know that if you put videos in content, it improves engagement, which in turn is going to improve your rankings. So the intent there is people who are searching for tactics and strategies to improve conversion on their website pages, as
it's opposed a little
to
meta
video. Yeah.
It's a little meta when it's a production company who produces marketing materials, because some of the traps you fall into, and these can be, Omar, these can be good support items, and you're thinking educational, and I get it. You want to exhibit expertise but you're not necessarily exhibiting expertise in video. You're exhibiting expertise effectively in marketing. And video happens to be one of the vehicles, because what you want to do is pair the fact that you understand how video can be part of an omni-channel effort with the most beautiful blank-in videos you've ever seen. And I know the site, I know your site, and I know your offering, by the way, and you already have one of the most beautiful. When you go to your site, it's beautiful. You see these folks really know video. Like your examples, the portfolio, how do you dovetail that? You don't necessarily want to show the Adobe After Effects, right? And people get into that challenge, but it's about showing them through the vehicle and also knowing how it might be part of a omni-channel marketing campaign. I will connect with you as well, Omar, because I've got some ideas, because I do know the site. Andrew, does the give strategy differ in B2B high-end custom structures, primarily for the event industry? Average sale about $4,000. I've got piles I can say, but we've got 1 minute. And so I would love, Dale, in that type of scenario, they're selling a physical product, $5,000. I know what my answer is. What's yours?
So my answer is, this is where this strategy really shines, because you can't give away a tent or half price off a tent or something like that. Right. But you can get to know the typical buyer in your space and what their real motivations are, and the information that they need to look good to their boss or whoever's running the event, and feel confident in making a purchase decision. So the better you get to know them, the better you'll get to understand what that might be. It might be a price list. It might be there might be a freebie related to shipping or setup that you could throw out there too. But typically in the process, like, they want confidence that they're making the right decision. So what type of materials could you give them that would inspire the confidence that they need to move forward?
Yeah, I think you get into, and whether it's B2B tech or B2B product or large sale, the way I like to think about it is the way Dale mentioned it before. It was that conversion intent per piece. But and what's the next stage of the buying journey? And what's the thing that would be exciting for them to receive that feels very bespoke, feels very high quality? If you're looking at 101 content, things to do when you're thinking about planning a wedding, that's going to be very high level. You have no idea exactly. But is there a high quality asset that you can produce? Those are the high quality assets throughout the journey, are B2B tried and true. Think about different types of assets for various buyers and various stages of the funnel. Your existing customers need gives of assets, but when you're in that big price zone, you really want to know, is the juice worth the squeeze to do a discount? What are the pains that they have during the buying process that you might be able to alleviate? Maybe you realize that people might perceive shipping costs are maybe a pain point that they expect to be overwhelmed with negative energy. So start thinking about those, and those are the gives that you can provide and have a lot of success. I had an offering in B2B tech that was called targeted downloads. It would try to assess the level of intent based on the article being read and provide the perfect thing that they might give an email for. So be thinking about that, and I think you're going to have a lot of success. Wow, what a great way to round up with 2 real examples and some homework. I love it. And thank you for all the questions, everyone. There's a few we didn't get to that we'll address via email, but I love those specific examples because it brings these things to life. If you could find out that this particular asset or this particular incentive drove leads or direct sales, that's the definition of having used their landing page or the content that you created to build SEO outcomes and then turning it into actual dollars. And Dale, how can people find you, and why should they find you online?
Yeah, my agency is fireandspark.com, all spelled out. I'm Dale, Dale, at fireandspark.com. So happy for you guys to email me directly and connect to me on LinkedIn too. I'm always happy to take a look at your website and give you a little bit more information about what I think you should do. I'm very opinionated when it comes to SEO. I'd love to contribute, and so happy to talk to anybody who might want me to just take a quick look at their website.
Yeah, take him up on that offer. Dale really knows his stuff and really gets into trying to identify what makes your business special as well as makes money. And I think that's a unique differentiation of Fire and Spark and the work that they do. Just unique differentiation. Book a personalized content audit. Might be with me, might be with someone else on my team. Most likely it'll be with me if you do it via this link, book/demo, and we'll give you some insights, how to chop down the trees if you're up in a competitive zone. Where do you have weak content, strong content? What is the next 10 pages you should create? Whatever you want, just tell me in the link when you book it, and we'll be ready for it, and we'll make it happen. Thank you so much, Dale, for making the time, getting into all the details, giving away a few cool secrets that I like. I got takeaways. I always do when I talk to you. I got one that I think I might go update that e-commerce maturity model page. Steven's probably taking note on it.
Awesome. So, just give me a backlink and you can have it.
Hat tip. All right. Yes, they're not worth that much anymore, but make sure you get those backlinks. All right. Thanks, Dale. I really appreciate it. And like I said, you're going to get this recording the next few days, or if you're listening to the recording, please shoot us a note, give us some feedback. I'm on LinkedIn, Jeff Coyle, or Jeffrey_Coyle on Twitter, and I respond to everything. Thanks again, Dale.
All right. Thanks for having me.